I've been watching the Daystar story unfold over the last maybe 8 weeks since Julia Royce published a report on Jonathan Susie Lamb and the alleged cover-up of the essay of their daughter. Now, there's so many things that I've seen with interest as someone who works with abuse and someone who works in Christian spaces with leadership and with people in congregations. There's so many things that I see interest in. But the statement that was made recently made me smile in not such a great way, because it's one classic technique that is used when there is spiritual abuse happening or by narcissistic leadership. So stay tuned. I'm going to discuss. So welcome to this episode of the Stories That Shape Us podcast. You know, we talk about childhood trauma and we help women who experience abuse. And we talk about all things abuse in religious spaces, whether it's SA, whether it's domestic abuse, whether it's spiritual abuse. Now, when the Daystar story broke, I knew about Daystar. I learned about Daystar a couple of years ago. I don't really watch Daystar. Sometimes I watch the interview with Joanna Lamb, and depending on who she's interviewing, sometimes I'd watch that here on YouTube. Not really, I because of where I live, I don't really have a Daystar TV. Now, when this story broke, I found it really interesting that what was happening. But before the story broke, I don't remember how I got hold of Susie Lamb, and I used to see her Instagram post and I knew something was brewing. I didn't quite know what it was and what it was going to be, but I knew there was a lot of hurt there. It was very evident that here was a woman that was in pain and something had happened, even though I didn't know what it was. There was lots of cryptic posts that she made. So when the story broke, I thought, okay, so this is what was happening. But what was interesting for me in this story was the allegation of SA and the way the organization dealt with this allegation. And here is a parent that is in distress, confused. But when you're brought up in a religious system that is about submission, you automatically will submit to leadership. And I heard that very clearly through how they describe what happened and how they default to what their parents told them to do, even though these were adults. But what people don't understand, some people that I see commenting, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you say something before? Why didn't you talk about it earlier? I work with people who experience SA from different stages and ages in their lives. Many people do not know how to protect their children because nobody ever protected them. Many people will in Christian in organizations and churches and ministries will default to whatever they're told by leadership, because that's how it works in that organization. Because you are told to submit, and it has been ingrained in you, it's been trained in you from very early. And so even something as abhorrent as that, you will submit naturally because that's what you've been trained to do. And to break out of that mold is not very easy to do. And so that's why I applaud them for what they're doing now, because they're literally going against the tide. So there will be people who ask questions such as, well, why did it take them so long? Why are they doing it now? This is very common when you are brought up in a system that you are trained to submit to leadership and authority. You know, the Bible says that we should train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. I have been in circles where that training means absolute authority, that a parent must have absolute authority, that the child must not question anything the parents say, and they must obey swiftly without question and strictly. Now, when this has been trained in you, you just doesn't know how to do something different when you're an adult. When you're an adult, you just do the same thing. And I think parents who know this will continue to take advantage of this situation. And I've worked with many people who, as they are breaking out and as they're doing something for themselves and thinking differently for themselves, there'll be a lot of backlash. There will be pastors who will talk to them and tell them to submit and obey. There'll be meetings about submission, and there'll be threats and all of the same things that we're seeing Jonathan and Susan Lamb go through right now, all of the audios that we've listened to. And I will link the Julie Royce report below this video so you can go and read the report for yourself. And she is a skilled investigator, and I've asked the right questions and very thorough in her work. And so all the audios that have come out, all the things, the manipulation and the intimidation that happen in meetings, all of that is very common, very, very common in many religious spaces. Now, I'm really glad that we're having these conversations because, we started Wounds to Scars many years ago, talking about abuse in Christian spaces, talking about spiritual abuse, talking about manipulation, talking about narcissistic leaders, talking about all the things that we're seeing unfolding in this space. Now, one of the tactics that I said that I felt was used recently by the last executive that gave a statement from Daystar. And what we want to hear is an organization, a Christian organization, that have taken the allegation of SA seriously, are investigating. And what we want to hear is, how did this investigation go? Are people being held to account? Are vulnerable people protected? That is all I think the public wants to know. And as I've been watching over the number of weeks with different people that are reporting on this and talking about this from many, many different angles, it's really interesting that sometimes the distraction is so good, the distraction is so well done, that it's almost as if the child can get lost in all of the distraction. The original allegation can get lost in all of it. Like the poor little baby who the alleged, essay that happened can get lost in all the shuffle. And sometimes when someone discloses a church, when somebody discloses in a Christian organization, there's so many things that comes in that the initial allegation can get lost in all of the talk and meetings. So here's the distraction that I've seen. And I saw it before when Joni Lamb gave her statement about what she felt was happening and how she felt from her perspective. I felt that was distraction too, because she never addressed the allegations. She went against, like, this is why he's doing it. He's upset with me. He wanted presidency, can't get it, and therefore he's doing a smear campaign against his mom. I found that really peculiar because I thought, here is the first distraction technique. So I was watching with interest to see what else was going to happen. And then we saw the executive gave a statement recently. Now, there is a YouTuber called Lynn Thompson, and she is talking a lot, and she's interviewing a lot of people, and she's asking a lot of questions, and she's really trying to hold Daystar to account around the allegation. Now, the executive that came out they wanted to clear things up and made a statement. They never addressed the SA allegation. They never addressed any of those things. What they did was went on the attack. And as I'm watching it, it was very difficult to watch, very difficult, because I thought, here are people who are Christians, and this is the way they speak. This is the way they speak. It was a very difficult video to watch. But as I watched, they did some distraction to try to derail the conversation, to refocus us. So here is what distraction tactics from institutions and organizations where spiritual abuse is sometimes present. Here is what it is. A common distraction, a common tactic is to bring up unrelated issues to distract you. Now, remember, I'm talking about the alleged essay of Jonathan and Susan Lamb's daughter by someone within the organization, and they want answers. They thought the allegation was investigated and this person was cleared, and they found out later that there was no investigation and the person wasn't cleared. And now they're hurt because their daughter's essay has been covered up and they want answers, right? So they decided, because we can't get answers internally, we're going to take it externally. And here we are. Now, the executive did not address anything. Neither did the grandmother, Joanna Lamb, when she gave her statement. She also didn't address any of the allegations against her granddaughter at all. In fact, nobody's mentioning that, right? So sometimes it's getting lost in all the muddle. And so the distraction, oftentimes leadership will bring up unrelated issue to distract you. So the legitimate concern that Laura Lynn is trying to talk about and other YouTubers are trying to talk about is the alleged essay, right? The distraction that they came with from the statement was they started to attack Laura Lynn. And now this is not in defense. I'm just trying to explain to you how sometimes, or institutions that have sometimes spiritual abuse present, how they will use distraction to derail conversations. And this is a really good way of them trying to derail the conversation. Because if the focus is on this woman's YouTube and her wanting to make money, then the focus cannot be, it will shift the focus. They're trying to shift the focus from themselves onto, oh, this is just about money. This is just about money. You just want money. Your YouTube channel was struggling, and you are using us to get more clicks, more views, and all the rest of it. Of course, she has defended herself and, said we just want answers. But I'm using that as an example. If you are in an organization, if you are in a ministry, if you are in a church, and you have made an allegation and you are asking for leadership to do something, or, this is, if it's an historic case for you, this is one thing that sometimes they do. There's distraction. Of course, they use other tactics, but distraction is a really key one that they use to derail conversations, to shift people's attention, and to take the focus off themselves onto something else. Because as long as the focus is not on them, let's turn the tide a little bit to focus on that. Sometimes it might happen in your interpersonal relationships or in your romantic relationships where you might be hurt by something and you make a presentation. You said, this is what was happening. They will often, the person with narcissistic traits might often bring up a distraction, an issue to distract you. You might say, well, you stepped on my toes this morning and I need you to apologize, or next time when you're passing to ask excuse or whatever. They will say, well, last week you did mine and you didn't say sorry. That's a way to distract you, to bring up something. Sometimes they'll bring up something that you did last week, last month, last year, 10 years ago, as a way to distract you, to create confusion and to divert attention from the real issue. I often find it really sad when a religious organization, an allegation is made and they use distraction techniques. Now, if you are dealing with something like this and this ever happens to you, the purpose of distraction is to discredit you and to plant doubt in others' minds about your credibility. It's a way of avoiding taking accountability. And as this story continues, what I'm really hoping, and I think what many people are hoping, is that we'll hear something about this child and the allegations, and that something, investigation can be done and she can be okay. And I think that's what people want to see. Now, we work with women who experience SA at various stages in their lives. We see the devastation that it causes. We see how this is something that will last throughout the rest of their lives. They're often dealing with it 20, 30 years after the incident. They'll still be dealing with aspects of how it's completely changed their lives. Anybody who has experienced SA and have done the journey of healing knows that it's a continuous journey. There are times when we rest, but there are times when you have to deal with another part of the journey, different phase in your life will bring up different aspects of the incident. It doesn't matter how small, it doesn't matter how large, it doesn't matter where it is on the spectrum, it's the same impact. So I would like to say to religious organizations that when an allegation is made, take it seriously. Listen to victims. Try not to dismiss and discredit people who are asking for answers. Sometimes it can be really challenging to sit in the spotlight and to listen to hard things and answer hard questions. That can be challenging. We know that. But the best thing for everybody to do, and as people of God, as Christians, we want to walk in the light as much as possible. And when we haven't walked in the light, we want to be honest and say, put our hands up and say we haven't. And that's where God protects us. When we are honest and when we act with integrity in that way, when somebody make an allegation, and to take responsibility. What we don't want to do is use tactics that are not of God. We don't want to gaslight. We don't want to manipulate. We don't want to use distraction to derail conversations. We want to stick to the issue. We want to hear people. We want to sit with the hard questions. We want to do the investigation to make sure that children and young people and vulnerable people are safe. I think more than anything, that's what people want. So I wanted to share the things that I'm learning as I watch this story unfold, as I see different elements of distractions and manipulation and gaslighting happening, as I see different places where religious abuse is clearly evident, where ministry leaders are saying, we have been in ministry for 20 years and 30 years, so we know, and you better listen to us. And that's another way of not taking responsibility. We want to be light in this world. And as long as we are using these tactics, we are not walking in the light. Let us walk in the light. Let us make the church, let us make religious spaces safe for everyone, because that's what will honor the name of the Lord. Thank you for joining me in this episode of the Stories That Shape Us podcast. I hope you'll join me on the next story.